Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today I wanted to take another journey through the star map, but today we're going to be moving a little bit closer to our current home, exploring the Croshaw system. Now, Croshaw is a pretty exciting little place because it's really where everything started and was really humanity's first jump into another system. It's named Croshaw after all because the man who made the jump was Nick Croshaw. Only one jump from the Sol system, it was decided that it was the perfect candidate for the people of Earth to kind of move out into the stars and begin our outward expansion. Initially, after the jump was discovered, many companies moved out to Croshaw to try and begin doing their own terraforming. But there was a big problem. No one really knew how much it was going to cost, and as such, everybody failed. Now, mankind's determination never to be doubted, a plan was conceived to unite funds and goals and really just to make this happen, and thus the UNE, or United Nations of Earth, was born. Now, a fun little fact about this jump point was that it was a really dangerous thing to travel, and not everybody made it through. And there was not really an auto flight mechanic before. So there was early jump travels that were flown by specialized pilots known as jumpers, and they ended up selling their services as being the only safe and reliable way to move through these jump points safely. Eventually, automated systems came about, making this job more or less obsolete for commercial purposes. Now, jumping back through real quick, let's take another look in the Sol system so I can show you an interesting stopping point, and that's the Todd Kessner space station, which is situated kind of near that jump point, which is really a major shipping hub to process goods prior to reaching Earth to kind of help prevent log jams in the major metro areas. Okay, let's go back through onto Croshaw. The star in this system is a dwarf star, but it's fairly unremarkable in itself, but there is some really cool stuff in this system. One area that the lore and star map don't currently match is that there's a couple of asteroid belts in the system. The Daedalus cluster is located in the outer ring of the system, and on the star map, the Icarus cluster is doing the same thing. The lore talks about the Icarus field actually being between the star and the first planet, likely being the beginnings of a planet that just never ended up forming. The Icarus field is actually responsible for shielding enough radiation to allow for a habitable zone, and based on that description, I think the map just hasn't been updated yet, or maybe the mechanics on how asteroid placement isn't really nailed down yet. But between the detailed explanation of the asteroid field and the name, and for those of you who aren't familiar, Icarus was the dude that flew too close to the sun and had his wings burn up, I think it's a safe bet that it should actually be in this region. The asteroid fields have been actively mined for a very long time, and as they are the oldest mining fields, or at least some of the oldest mining fields, so in the persistent universe, don't expect to really strike it rich mining in these locations because they've been pretty well done tapped out. Now, the first planet, Croshaw I, is basically a nice, pretty death trap. The atmosphere is very dense and very corrosive. Oh, and it's toxic. So outside of the fact that you would die if you were to step foot on the surface of the planet, you would actually probably die before that because the natural corrosiveness of the atmosphere would eat through the hull of your ship and you would probably plummet to your death. And let's not forget the close proximity to the star, so I'm guessing this place is about as hot as hell as possible. It's nice to look at though, so it's got that going for it, so maybe make sure you take a quick little peek at it as you're flying by. Angeli is the second planet in the system, but it's the first in a lot of people's hearts and minds. It was humanity's first successful terraformed planet, and it was one of the most beautiful planets that we've ever seen. The overall landscape is very similar to that of Earth, with large oceans and prairies and mountains. And like on Earth, Angeli is actually a very seismic place, which has made mining severely limited. You know, you don't want to go mining and then all of a sudden break off a huge quake. So based on that, the building codes are requiring people to have extremely thick foundations as well as dampeners in place to protect from earthquakes, or Angeli quakes. I think that sounds a little bit better. But many people aren't living day to day worried about the big quake that's going to be coming, but scientists think that it really could happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if those of you with hospital or medical ships get a story at some point in the persistent universe about a big quake needing a support of medical help. You know, maybe transportation people could also see a big boom as they're probably going to need supplies to rebuild. And like we've seen with natural disasters on Earth, criminals unfortunately tend to spring up in these situations. So maybe bounty hunters or mercenaries may find jobs if this comes to fruition. Angeli is known for its Earth-like culture. It has a very different flair, though. It's got a lot of unique foods and what appears to be a very trendy planet and kind of a foodie type culture. This part I kind of like, and as a whiskey and a bourbon man myself, I enjoyed the lore talking about how some of the most expensive whiskeys in the universe are coming from Angeli. Well, I guess that's not technically true, because they're actually shipped from Earth to Angeli in unpressurized cabins, then put into specific holding locations on Angeli, where they then get the best lighting, temperatures, and air, are blasted with loud music, which apparently helps, and then are shipped back to Earth with an official round-trip label to prove its overall authenticity. Now, this trade could be good business for cargo organizations and could be really nice, a nice trade lane for pirates to get involved in, which is also good for groups providing escort and security services. Smugglers may find a nice business by picking up the whiskey and Angeli and taking it to different systems that may be labeled as dry, if that sort of thing exists. They did in Elite Dangerous, so it's a possibility that it could be here in Star Citizen too, but I think there's a lot of interesting mechanics and possibilities at play here. The third planet in Croshaw is known as Van, and while Van is technically habitable, it's also at the very edge of that zone, meaning it's more or less a frozen wasteland. There's lots of mining and resource extraction that has taken place here as the commodities were really needed in this new and growing system. So today, Van is known for having a booming art scene, mostly inspired by people really wanting to come and see the absolutely beautiful auroras that take place over most of the sky. The ice-cold temperatures also make it a hot spot for tourism revolving around winter sports, but with temperatures below negative 50 degrees Celsius, it kind of makes for a dangerous place for those that are not prepared. And finally, the fourth planet in the system doesn't even have a name anymore. The planet was kind of looked at to have used to have been a super-Earth type of planet that ended up losing its atmosphere. And all valuable resources on this planet have since been extracted, and it's basically just a big floating rock at this point. The system also has 3 total jump points, which includes the one to Sol that we've already discussed, as well as one to Pharaon and Rhaetor. So that's basically summarizing the Croshaw system and gives you a bit of background info on why it's such an important place. Stay tuned, for a whole lot more content. I appreciate you guys watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.